The origins of corruption in Nigeria are complex and multifaceted, tracing back to pre-colonial practices, being exacerbated during the colonial era, and becoming systemic in the post-independence period with the rise of public administration and the oil boom. Pre-colonial era. While traditional African societies had strong moral and communal systems, some forms of corruption, such as the abuse of power by certain traditional leaders or the manipulation of trade networks and tribute systems for personal gain, were present. However, social sanctions and communal values generally kept corruption at a manageable level. Colonial era. British colonial rule significantly altered traditional governance structures and exacerbated corruption. Introduction of indirect rule. The British introduced the indirect rule system, particularly in the South with warrant chiefs, who became powerful tax collectors and judges. Many of these chiefs used their positions for self-enrichment, leading to widespread accusations of bribery and the sale of justice. Discouragement of indigenous entrepreneurship. Colonial policies discouraged the development of a strong indigenous private economic base, meaning that state coffers became the primary source of wealth accumulation for the emerging Nigerian elite. This fostered a reliance on public funds for private gain. Early scandals. The first major political figures were investigated for questionable practices during this time. For instance, Nnamdi Azikiwe was investigated in 1956 regarding transactions at the African Continental Bank, and Adegoke Dalabu faced charges of political corruption in the Western region. Post-independence and the oil boom. After independence in 1960, corruption became more pervasive and institutionalized, driven by several key factors. Political instability. A cycle of military coups and fragile civilian governments created an environment of unaccountable leadership, allowing corrupt practices to flourish with impunity. Discovery of oil. The discovery of commercial quantities of oil in the 1950s, followed by the oil boom of the 1970s, injected vast amounts of wealth into the national economy. This vast public wealth, managed without adequate transparency or checks and balances, became a major source of large-scale embezzlement and rent-seeking by political elites. Weak institutions. Structural weaknesses in governance, such as poorly enforced laws, a weak judiciary, and limited checks and balances, have enabled corruption to persist. Patronage and nepotism. Deeply entrenched patronage networks and ethnic loyalties often mean that social connections, rather than merit, determine access to resources and opportunities, perpetuating the cycle of corruption. In essence, corruption in Nigeria is a deeply ingrained, systemic problem with roots in its historical development and socio-political structures, rather than a single starting point.